thing I really like about them is that they're really four-season trees. You get to enjoy them without their leaves, when the leaves come out, in the summer when they have their leaves, and then when they all turn in the fall. They can be a little bit challenging. They grow fast. It's a different kind of tree to grow, but very rewarding. So they often say that the king of bonsai is the black pine, but they often say that the queen of bonsai is the Japanese maple. And so I want to just show you a couple resources. So this is, I think, a very good book. It's by Peter Adams. There's also the older version of the same book. If you want to read up on how to grow a Japanese maple bonsai, this is a really good book to pick up. Once you get that one, and let's say you really get into Japanese maples, then you need to get this book. This book is not a bonsai book, but it is the comprehensive guide on Japanese maples. So if you go in there, you can see he basically has every variety of Japanese maple you could ever find. And one thing that I particularly like is he has a whole listing right here of every single one, and then it tells you the various characteristics. So it's height, form, color, group, effect, and the best one here is bonsai. So when it says yes for bonsai, it's pretty much bang on. So as you know, so Japanese maple comes from Japan, China, Korea, that area of the world, and it's an understory tree. And so as an understory tree, they tend to like a little bit of dappled shade. They tend to get burnt when they're out in full sun. And they tend to be very apically dominant, so they really want to shoot from the top of the tree. The Japanese refer to Japanese maples as mountain maples because they tend to grow more in the mountainous areas there. Because down by the coast, it would just be too warm for them in a lot of cases. So anyway, so this is one really good book. And then if you collect international bonsai, you might want to find this one, number 1 from 2000. It has it has a really good article here on choosing a container for a Japanese maple. And then if you're into bonsai today, there's just a myriad of different articles, but I brought in some of the best ones. So if anyone is interested in taking a look at these during the break, I'm just going to leave them right here. Okay, so who here grows Japanese maples?
In my garden.
In your garden? Okay, so maybe about 10 or so people are growing Japanese maple bonsai. And have any of you, do you have really old trees?
No, young.
They're all young?
What do you mean by old?
Let's say,
Like 20 years?
let's say 15, 20 years old?
Yeah.
18 years?
Yeah, okay. So there's just, as a bonsai, yes. Okay, so some of you have some experience with it, and then it sounds like a number of other people don't have some experience. So I'm gonna share with you kind of all the tips and tricks that I've learned in my time growing bonsai, which is about 25 years now. So for some of you who have experience, feel free to just pipe up and share your experiences. And those who don't have much experience with it, just feel free to just ask me as many questions as you want, okay? So what I wanted to do here is, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Japanese maples. I'm going to go through a season and the general things that we do with them. I'll talk a little bit about cultivars. I'll talk a little bit about where you can go and get them. And then after the break, I'm going to do some demonstrations. So I brought some Japanese maple seedlings that I grew last year. So I'm going to do a very short transplant of that. And then I also have this tree, which is now in a, it's ready to be transplanted. It didn't do particularly well last year, and I think it's because the soil is not porous enough anymore, so it's time to transplant it. And it's just the right time, just as the buds are starting to swell and you're starting to see some color.
How come you have these outside?
No, so I have them all in my garage. So I live in Zone 5B, which is up in Markham. And basically the only Japanese maples that will survive well in the ground where I live are the red leaf ones, the purple ones like Bloodgood and Empire One and a few other ones like that. All the other ones usually get some winter damage. But you folks living down here in balmy Zone 6, you can grow probably a few more, maybe some of the natural green varieties and maybe even some of the cultivars. So for me, I put all of my Japanese maples into the garage. I have part of my garage sectioned off, insulated, and yeah, when you've been growing bonsai long enough, you go through extraordinary measures. And
anything else in your garage?
them is I have them on shelves in that room, and in the winter, I just basically put a heater in there and I keep it around 0 degrees all winter long, and they sleep nicely, and I have to water them maybe once every month or once every month and a half. Come around this time, except for this year, usually around March, it starts to warm up, and my garage starts to warm up, and all of my trees start kind of looking like this one. This is the most advanced one, where they're almost ready to pop leaves out of the buds. And that's really bad in March, because the last frost for me is going to be sometime in May. So what I have is, I know it's crazy, but I drilled a hole into my garage, and I have this hole, and I have a pipe that comes out of there, and I bought an accelerator fan, the kind of ones that you put into your house to increase the flow of air. And I have it on a timer, and it right around, I'd say 11 o'clock, it comes on, draws the cold air in, and then around 11 again, it turns off and it stops drawing it in. So it kind of provides a bit of refrigeration and can hold the trees back a little bit.
How much sunlight do you get out of that in your garage?
0.
0.
Yeah, no sunlight whatsoever.
No sunlight.
Yeah.
And that worked like that.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, the heat lamp kicked in, right?
Yeah, so a couple of them started popping a little bit because it was like 10 degrees, and I can turn that fan on, but if it's 10 degrees at night, it doesn't really matter. And we all know that trees come out of dormancy because of heat, not because of time of year or the amount of light. So once you reach about 10 degrees, everything starts waking up. Curiously, I put my Japanese black pines in there. I have Shimpaku junipers, stuff like that, and they don't need any light in the winter either. It's just
When you book your tree into the garage, is it November or October?
yeah, around November. Yeah, usually once all the leaves are off, or we start getting really hard frosts and I have to pick the leaves off.
So you must stay 3 months in the garage.
Yeah, 3 months, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so let's just go through a year with the Japanese maple. So right now we're just coming out of winter. The trees are starting to wake up. The buds are starting to pop. So as I said, as soon as you start seeing your buds starting to look like this, it's time to start transplanting your Japanese maples. And so the kind of soil mix that you need to use for a Japanese maple is a very porous soil mix that allows lots of air, but has a little bit of retention of moisture. What I use for it, and you know we can have a fight about this later on, but I use 4 ingredients all in equal parts. I use haydite or turfus or some kind of thing like that. 1 academa, 1 black earth, and then usually I try to find something sharp like lava rock or something to that effect. But the reality is, as long as you're using a nice granular soil, you could probably use pretty much anything. Many people don't like to use soil, so black earth in their mixes. I still haven't completely been weaned off of that. But that's the important thing, is making sure that you have the air circulation.
Do you put humus?
For particle sizes. What I've found with Japanese maples is, if you're using kind of a mucky soil, you really can get root rot. So I really try to refrain from doing that. So springtime comes, you're gonna do your transplanting, and then what I find is they start needing some light. So let's say mid-April I've done my transplanting of my maples. I start bringing them out, and if I get a string of days where it's going to be, let's say, warmer than 1 or 2 at night, then I just leave them outside and I let the sun just blast them. And I leave them in full sun at that time of year because the sun just isn't that strong. And they will start, the leaves will start to pop out. But then the challenge with Japanese maples, of course, is that now I have tender leaves, and if I leave them out and we get a hard frost, I'm going to lose those trees. So I cart them into my garage, into my shed, and most times I don't need a heater, so I just basically keep them in there. And I could leave them in there for an entire week in April because we're going to get frost every single night. I've never had a problem with that. I don't end up with extremely long internodes or anything like that because it's an unheated shed and it's cool, and those trees basically kind of slow down and don't do anything. Once we get to the point where we're not getting any more frost, then the trees come out, and I usually leave them out in full sun maybe till the end of May. I find that if I put them into the shade, they start to really shoot and the internodes get long. And that's maybe one of the biggest challenges with Japanese maples is long internodes. So I can show you an example of that. This the shoyo that I brought in. I put this into the shade, and I think I watered it too much, and I maybe gave it a little bit too much fertilizer. And you can see the internodes here are like 3 inches long. That's a real problem for a finished bonsai, but for something like this where I'm just trying to thicken the trunk and build some structure, it's not a big deal. But basically this year what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this tree back pretty hard, back to the really close internodes and try to build it out. If I had been a little bit more careful, I would have really controlled the water and the amount of fertilizer that I gave the tree, because what I really want is I want short internode slices going all the way along the branches.
During the spring, this time of year, onward, how do you do your watering when they're in the shed and so forth?
I find that, like, even if they're in there for a week, they don't even need watering, not typically. And like, once again, I kind of don't want to water them too much anyway, because then I end up with this kind of monstrosity.
Excuse me?
Yes?
You said that you perhaps weren't as focused on your watering and fertilizing, causing bigger internodes.
Yeah, on this particular tree.
On that particular
yeah.
tree. Typically, what would you water and fertilize to keep the nodes closer together?
So I don't normally fertilize my maples that